friends that you're tough and you're a winner, because the whole town of Edgarden just wanted the Rams to win at any cost.
Here comes Joseph again with his Rams second down, and the fake to Jackson, and then the throw over the middle to a receiver. The touchdown, West St. John.
Well, that's Ram football right there. That's what those people right there used to see them.
I've watched Juan from the minute that he arrived at the high school playing athletics, being involved in the football program. He was a kid that you could see where it was with him, it was up here. It was all mental. He understood. He was one step ahead of everybody else.
His first year, they won the state championships in the Louisiana Superdome. It was a great feeling, just being there, looking at my son compete and feeling like, wow.
Juan was the community's hero.
I used to come and watch Juan play when I was a little kid, about 7, 8 years old. I used to be that kid on the side of the stadium playing throw-up tackle with a Gatorade bottle. Pretty much my whole life, I knew I wanted to be like Juan and all the other West St. John legends that I watched growing up. You can't wait to put on that helmet and to play on the field.
Yards per carry in this one for Jackson.
So Joseph is dealing to Jackson right now. He has an opening. He is headed to the end zone. It's a touchdown for the Rams.
Juan is a childhood friend of mine. We've been knowing each other since we were like 6, 7 years old. Then went to high school. We started finding out who we were, through football. And the rest was history. When we grew up in Edgar, Louisiana, small town, maybe a population of 2,000 at best. It's a town that has rich tradition for its sports, particularly football.
Well, high school football to these communities are very important because in Edgar, it's the only show in town. There isn't any movie theater. There isn't any Walmart.
After graduating high school, Juan went to Millsaps College in Mississippi. Juan played quarterback there. My excitement when watching him play was he would run the ball sometimes. And I would stand up as like, Juan's running the ball. Run, Juan, run. So when Juan got married to Kayla, that was a highlight for him in his life. I remember talking to him and he says, Mom, how do you say, we live happily ever after? Those were his words,
In August in 2011, Juan was just ready to open a new chapter in his life. He had a beautiful young wife that he loved. He had a beautiful daughter. He realized that I have a greater calling to go back home and just be with people who I love, give back to my community, give back to young kids.
What better way to do it than to become a coach for the other students? So he brought his family back with him, Kayla and Arya, and he became the West St. John quarterback coach.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Coach Juan Joseph. I went to high school here. I graduated in 2005. The biggest thing that I focus on my quarterbacks is telling them to have quick feet and have quick thinking. So I just focus on telling them to trust their eyes and play fast.
He felt like that was a proud title to have when he would come home. It's like, I'm the quarterback coach, man, so.
I think the biggest impact with him is that it wasn't never like a job for him. He always made it look so fun. And it made other guys around him relax and have fun. He was always a jokester and a prankster. He knew that I was always meticulous with the schedule. So one time he came in and he changed my alarm clock. So man, I wake up and everybody's already at practice. And he's laughing because he's like, damn, coach, what? Just overslept. Juan represented all of the good things from my community.
He's a celebrity and he feels that way, but they were just happy to see Juan, like off the football field to get a handshake. There was people that would cook Juan's favorite dish just for him to come over to eat.
In 2014, I was a senior receiver here at West St. John. I wanted to win state extremely bad.
Now, our goal is always to win a state championship, and that's what it was about. It was about wanting to win another title, wanting to get another ring put in their finger.
We really had a collection of guys that really worked so well together. But after that Saturday night, everything changed. It wasn't the same.
In November 2014, Kayla was expecting their second child, and we were excited about that. We knew that it was going to be a girl. Juan had prepared setting up the nursery for the second daughter.
Everything was going pretty well around that time. It was football season. The weather was nice. They were expecting the second child.
That night on Saturday, I was on the night shift, and I got the call from my wife. And she said, I'm going to the hospital. And I was like, oh, good. Kayla's getting ready to have that baby, good. So she said, you're not listening to me. Juan had been shot. And I was like, what? Did what? And then I think I may have dropped the phone. I rushed out. In my phone, I had Betty's name as my wife. And I kept saying to myself, as long as I don't never see a call come through from my wife, everything's okay. By the time I got pretty close, my phone was sitting on the passenger seat, and it rang, and it said, my wife.
When I arrived at the hospital, I saw the two doctors standing there, and they looked at me and they said, I'm sorry. And I remember falling to my knees to the floor and just crying to the floor, and my son was dead. I'm sorry.
We got the call closer to 3 o'clock in the morning. Hey, there's a club shooting over here off of Bennington, and we have one guy down, and he went to the hospital. We go to the hospital, and I learned that Juan Joseph has passed away from his injuries. That's when it became a homicide. My next step is to go in there and start finding either next of kin or people that saw this, witnesses at the hospital that would have been there and knew something. And it was a profound sadness that was hanging over the room when you walked in. At that point, his family and friends were there. So I'm talking with anybody that'll talk to me about this, which everyone was more than willing to come up and tell me whatever they knew. And it was just people in bunches just kind of huddled together and upset and wanting to know information that we didn't have at this point because it's the very beginning stages of this investigation. I knew I had 2 witnesses that were probably our best source of information. We had them at the hospital, and we wanted to get as much information as we possibly could from them right then and there. We wanted what they saw and what was going on out there.
I'm in the waiting room, and I recall that's when Detective Ballard and I first had initial contact on trying to start piecing together what took place that night.
We talked to Griffin and Patrick. We learned that there was an altercation after leaving the nightclub.
I just remember in that moment, it seemed like 5 questions was like 500 questions, so we did take a break.
Juan's dad kind of told me a lot about Juan and how he was.
I do remember speaking with Detective Ballard, and one thing that he said to me was, Mr. Joseph, I promise you, I will get to the bottom of this and find out who killed your son.
November 15th, we traveled to Southern University in Baton Rouge for the football game against Mississippi Valley. We were privileged to be up watching the game from the suite. And I remember conversations with Juan about a coworker that was having a birthday party and that he wanted to go pass by the birthday party. He felt like, well, I hadn't gone out in a long time, and that I know that I won't be going out for a long time because we have a new baby at the house.
That's when him and Pat Jackson and William Griffin went to Club Allure in Baton Rouge. Going out wasn't something that he did often, at least not to a club. So this was kind of, I don't know, different. I remember the last thing I told him was like, be careful. Like, whatever you do, just be careful. That was my last words to him.
This is 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's when everybody piles out of these nightclubs. And then we have a shooting. There's cars screeching, leaving, and people running for cover. And at the scene, we're trying to sift through all that stuff to find witnesses and anything of evidentiary value that we can from that parking lot. It's really dark out there. We were searching with flashlights, but we did find some shell casings that night. Those were photographed and collected by our crime scene division.
Initially on scene, we don't have the names of any shooters or persons involved in the crime, but we have descriptions of the vehicle involved.
Witnesses are saying we have a black car leaving the scene. That's pretty much one of our first pieces of information that we got. We brought Juan's friends, Patrick Jackson and William Griffin, back to our office before daylight. It was, I want to say it's around 5 o'clock in the morning. Patrick Jackson is a lifelong friend of Juan Joseph. They played football together, and they've been coaching together at Edgard. William Griffin is more of a friend of Patrick's. Juan would have came in to knowing through Patrick.
Griffin and I are both pretty mentally exhausted. We were just trying to give our best perspective in the best way possible.
Once again, I'm Detective Hodges, Detective Bauer.
Given the circumstances, Patrick was handling it quite well, but you could tell that it was weighing on him. Most people don't see their best friend from their whole life shot and killed right in front of them.
Kind of take us from the start, kind of what happened.
So we end up on Allure.
Who was, when you say y'all?
When we was leaving the club, it was around the time the club was closing. So we all were together right outside of the exit of Allure, and William saw somebody he knew. So he walked off towards the parking lot that they had.
Like across the street?
Across the street. And in that moment is when we saw that a car almost hit Griffin, who is William. That started a verbal altercation between Griffin, the driver. I'm the one who's trying to restrain William, like, you know, we good or whatever, we don't know these people or whatever, let's go. As Juan talking to the passenger and I'm talking to William, the driver pulls out a gun, still a gun. I'm trying to back him off or whatever. And Juan is still trying to hash it out with the passenger, but the passenger had a pistol as well. It was an all-black gun. It seemed like it was a Glock. I recall seeing Juan, you know, trying to knock the gun out of his hand. He then pointed the gun at Juan, and he fired 2 rounds into Juan's chest. Juan hits the ground. They hop in the car, they're pulling off. We're running to Juan. Juan is down on the ground now, bleeding. I'm like, okay, I gotta get the license plate, but I think that was my first time experiencing like complete shock, because in that moment, I'm reciting the license plate like verbatim, and I am remembering nothing. I'm not retaining not one letter, one number in that license plate. I got Juan in my hands, keeping him alert. He's bleeding a lot. He and I are talking, and then it started getting to more of like, man, look, tell my wife I love her. And I was like, nah, you gonna tell your wife you love her yourself when you see her again.
Patrick let us know that there was at least 2 people in the car, because initially the argument was with William Griffin and the driver. So we're at least looking for 2 people. Patrick kind of locked down the Mercedes for us. Patrick knew his cars and said this was what that I saw leaving the scene. William Griffin was more all over the place. It was harder to keep William on track. He was so beside himself and kind of being so loud and boisterous.
I'm gonna hear my freaking friend. Did you get in a fight with somebody? What happened tonight, man?
Man, to be honest,
that'd be best.
I can't even remember, man. I don't even know how that didn't happen, to be honest with you.
Next thing you know, either the guy that I know got in an argument with another guy, or it was me that got in an argument with another guy. Whatever the case may, could have been both of us.
So you don't know if you got in an argument with somebody? You can't tell me if you got in an argument with somebody?
No, I can't tell you that.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Right, but I'm just trying to remember.
Well, remember for your dead friend. He felt like it was somebody that was jealous of his football status that he had attained, you know, playing pro ball or being a football star in college. From the way that Juan was shot, it didn't look like this was something that was done accidentally. He was directly targeted. From the way that the wounds looked, this is a very up-close and intimate shooting. To me, that makes it very personal.
When this happened, I'm getting like a plethora of calls. And then habitually you just log on to Facebook, and it's all over your timeline, it's all over everyone's timeline.
Not even 24 hours after his death, friends of 27-year-old Juan Joseph are clinging to the many bright moments in his life, many of those surrounding the game he loved. Baton Rouge police tell us Joseph was leaving a nightclub near College Drive with 2 friends around 2 a.m. Sunday when the group started arguing with 2 men parked in a black vehicle. Joseph was rushed to the hospital where he later died.
I probably cried for like 3 hours. It hit the whole community. Everybody felt that we lost a good person as a positive role model. Later that Sunday evening, we had a little get-together, about 200 or so more people, and we just gathered around and kind of grieved together and prayed together.
It was a tough day that we'll never forget. We'll never forget trying to figure out, where do we go from here? What's next?
I think everybody was in total shock that this actually happened to Juan Joseph. Juan didn't go out looking for trouble, especially gun violence. That's not the child that my parents raised. Everyone wanted justice. I need answers.
We had to get the football players together to play a game. I don't think that we ever factored not playing There's the playoffs. We were hoping to win a state championship to honor Juan.
The people here at West St. John High School have been grieving the loss of assistant football coach Juan Joseph. But tonight, they celebrate his memory the only way they know how.
The Juan that I know would want us to go out, play the football game.
I remember Greg running out with the football team, crashing through the banner that the cheerleaders had made.
I just broke through the paper. Yeah, I said, hey, let's do it, you know.
They released 27 blue and white balloons. You know, he lost his life at 27 years old.
It was the kids who came up with the slogan, "Do it for Juan." And they literally did it for Juan.
We won 51-0. Getting that win for the community meant a lot.
At the end, we were celebrating a victory, but we was ultimately celebrating Juan's life, you know.
But we still wondering, you know, like, where is the investigation going?
Officers are contacting nearby businesses and seeing if there's any video surveillance in the area. Sadly, this club had no video surveillance, period.
It seemed like every camera that we went to look at was facing the wrong direction, or it caught something that had nothing to do with this scene. At this point, a black Mercedes is our biggest lead. Everyone's telling us black Mercedes, black Mercedes. And then we get video footage from a nearby gas station, and it was like, okay, holy we see this black Mercedes. Just shortly after everybody's leaving this nightclub, cutting through at a high rate of speed through the parking lot. So we knew that we were on to something, but we have no idea why Juan was shot. We don't know what they were arguing about. I mean, this could have very well been an argument over football. We know we have two guys. We know we have one shooter. We don't have any names. We have no direction to go into other than this vehicle and the statements of Patrick and Griffin. These are football coaches. They're, you know, upstanding citizens of the community. People look up to them. They're not somebody that you think are gonna be shot in the middle of Baton Rouge at 2 o'clock in the morning.
The community of Edgard has such a strong love for Juan as a person, and they found that it was important that we find out who did this to Juan. I was getting phone calls, and people was wanting to, I guess, create a posse, if you will, to go and find the person who killed Juan.
The community, how intense and passionate they are about their Friday night lights. The community was as passionate or more passionate towards finding some form of justice for Juan.
Police are hoping someone will speak up. Anyone with information is asked to call Crime Stoppers.
That played a pivotal part in the tip line. I think people wanted to get this situation resolved, so they weren't hesitant to call the tip line.
It's within, I think, 24 hours of the shooting that there are Crime Stoppers tips that are being reported naming Kendrick Cloud and Lamar Cloud.
This was a huge break for us. If I've got names of subjects, I can get pictures. If I can get pictures, I can go to Patrick Jackson and William Griffin, and I can start showing lineups to these guys. Patrick and Griffin each had different views of this situation. So one of them was able to take a look at certain individuals better than the other one was.
I didn't know who the Clouds were. I recognized one from the night at the club, but not the other guy. The guy I recognized, he didn't pull the trigger.
Patrick Jackson had a better opportunity to view the driver. William Griffin was definitely more inebriated than Patrick was that night in the parking lot outside of Club Allure.
Patrick Jackson picked out Lamarck as the driver, and William Griffin picked out Kendrick as the shooter. I think Patrick was very confident in his, William was as well, but he said, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the guy. At that point, we didn't know that we were gonna get another anonymous tip that tells us that we needed to be looking for a guy out of the Houston area. Now that we have the positive ID on 2 suspects from friends of Juan, our next step is draft search warrants and 2 arrest warrants for both Kendrick and Lamarck Cloud. We find out we have a residence that it is pretty clear that they live at. We want weapons, clothing. We're still hot on this Mercedes. We do a drive-by of the residence, and that's when we see a black Mercedes leave the house. We stop the car. That's when we come across Lamika Cloud. Lamika is the sister of Lamarck, and we bring her back to our office for an interview. Talking to Lamika Cloud, we were able to determine that the vehicle was actually registered to her grandmother, but that Lamarck was the primary driver of this vehicle. We set up on the search warrant for Lamarck's house. We utilized the SWAT team, made entry, contacted Lamarck there. We did an extensive search of the house, and we did not find anything of any evidentiary value at the scene. But we were able to bring Lamarck back to our office for questioning.
You have the right to stop answering questions at any time. You understand that?
Okay, well, after you finish with that paper, I want to stop answering any questions.
Lamarck Cloud declined to make a statement that night. And we don't know where Kendrick is, so we're putting Kendrick's picture out there.
Now social media gets a grasp of it, and now everyone in our community is like, okay, time to go ahead and seal this up.
We actually get a call from one of the desk guys at 4th District, and he says, hey, look, we got this guy, Kendrick, over here, and he wants to turn himself in.
Did you do it? What do you have to say for yourself?
I gotta think that he knew that people were talking about this case, that someone was gonna tell us where his whereabouts were. But he also declined to give us any type of statements. So we've got the Clouds arrested, and they're giving us 0 information. And we couldn't find anything that linked Juan Joseph to Kendrick and Lamarck Cloud. None of it was lining up. And for our 2 suspects to not give us a statement, that's very frustrating. We are then contacted the next day by one of our friends with the Louisiana State Police. They say they have an anonymous source that wants to speak with us in person, which is something that doesn't really happen.
With Crime Stoppers tips, there are often financial awards and incentives, but that person had no financial gain or stake in the matter and came forward not expecting anything in return.
We decide to meet this anonymous source downtown Baton Rouge. We're sitting in the front seat and the driver's seat of our unmarked police car, and after being searched and patted down by another officer, this anonymous source agrees to get in our back seat and speak with us. The guy told me that we needed to be looking for a guy out of the Houston area. We're kind of like, a Houston guy. This is downtown Baton Rouge. Houston's 4.5 hours away. He also lets us know that the weapon that was used in this case was discarded in the woods next to Lamar Cloud's house. As soon as Mr. Anonymous gets out of the car, we are going to this wooded area. We just start methodically going through the woods, and then that's when my partner found the weapon in a bag next to a tree deep in the woods. We collect the weapon with crime scene, and they send it off for analysis. First thing, are these the same type of casings that y'all located at the scene? That was a match. On the same day, we are having the autopsy of Juan Joseph performed. We collect ballistic evidence from that autopsy, and then we learn that this is the weapon that killed Juan Joseph. This is the murder weapon. We had Kendrick, we had Lamarck, both of them were swabbed for DNA. We had that tested against the weapon, and it did not come back to any conclusive evidence. So the two people we have, their DNA is not on it.
We learned that Kendrick was not the shooter and Lamarck was not the shooter. So I'm sitting and I'm wondering still, then who shot my child?
There were 2 arrests made in the case, and in March of 2015, the grand jury indicts Lamar Cloud for second-degree murder and for felon in possession of a firearm, and they pre-termit the case against Kendrick Cloud, meaning that an insufficient number of people were able to agree on an outcome.
Kendrick has now not been indicted by a grand jury, and he's free to go.
At this point, we don't have enough evidence to say who the shooter is. We are proceeding on with the charges against Lamar Cloud and starting to prepare for trial against him. And then the police receive another anonymous tip naming Jamarcus Goodman as the shooter.
It just so happens that Jamarcus Goodman is from the Houston area. So our first anonymous source really knew what was going on. We called William Griffin and Patrick Jackson in to see if we can get him identified.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to recognize the guy that they were looking for. I didn't know who Jamarcus Goodman was. I didn't know how Jamarcus Goodman, played a factor into what was going on. Not being able to help in that moment, it made me feel like I was letting Juan down.
We learn that Jamarcus Goodman has a warrant for aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon in Houston. And everything that we're finding out is matching up. We know that he is involved somehow. Finally, in June 2015, we get notified that Jamarcus Goodman has been arrested in Houston.
Mr. Detective Brian Dollar, we're speaking with Mr. Jamarcus Goodman. Did you ever go to Baton Rouge?
No, I only went once.
Now, who are you down there visiting?
My aunt and my cousin.
And you said you went the last time last year, middle part of the year, toward the end, beginning?
It was college football season.
So here's our connection. He tells us, yes, Lamarck's dating my cousin. And he doesn't hang out with anybody else in Baton Rouge.
You friends with Lamarck?
We weren't best friends, but it was a respect and
Would you hang out with him?
Yeah, we did that at the house.
Have you ever been any clubs in Baton Rouge?
No, we never went. I went to 2 places, like back and forth. So I'm staying at my aunt's house.
I'm not trying to say it. Did you ever shoot and kill anybody in Baton Rouge?
No.
Once we were finished with the interview, we did get his DNA, and at that point, we rushed it back to be compared to all the evidence we had collected previously. This may be ultimately the last piece of the puzzle that we can use to get justice for Juan Joseph.
Just sitting around to get justice, it was really tough. But I had all the faith in the world that Detective Ballard would find out who did that to my son.
We get the preliminary results back and saying, yes, this is a match to Jamarcus Goodman, which is beyond awesome for us. Now that we have a positive ID from Patrick, we know that Lamarck was the driver. So at this point, what we really need to have happen is Lamarck Cloud needs to talk and tell us what happened. We were able to call Lamarck back in. I told him, I said, right now, you not speaking with us, the full brunt of this investigation is going to land on you. And it doesn't all have to land on you if you're not the shooter. Almost 2 years later, Lamarck Cloud finally gives us the full account of what happened on that night. This is Detective Brian Ballard. I'm here with Mr. Lamarck Cloud.
The night of the shooting, we were at the club that night, and we went out, we had fun, mingled with a couple of people. When everything was winding down, we left out to leave the club.
He tells us of an altercation between himself and William Griffin, and that he himself was armed and stepped out of a car.
I'm like, man, get around my car. So he get kind of routed. His partners end up coming toward us.
He said when he gets back in his car that Jamarcus also exited the vehicle. Now Jamarcus gets back in the car with a weapon.
He hopped back in. He was just like, man, just go, like that. And I just pulled out.
Did you hear gunfire?
To be honest with you, I didn't.
He didn't want to admit to hearing gunshots. He never said that I witnessed Jamarcus Goodman shoot this other individual over here.
For us, it was enough for him to corroborate that they were there that night, that Jamarcus Goodman was the passenger in that vehicle, and that he was holding that weapon. Because we know that that is the weapon that was used to kill Juan Joseph. At that point, Detective Ballard, the very next day, seeks an arrest warrant for Jamarcus Goodman.
It was a random act. So that's what makes it even that much more surreal. It's nothing he did, it's nothing he took part in, besides being Juan, trying to defuse the situation. And unfortunately, it backfired on him.
On the morning of September 20th, 2016, Lamarck Cloud is going to plead guilty to attempted possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. He will be sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. Jamarcus Goodman pled guilty to manslaughter nearly 4 years after Juan was murdered. And he was sentenced to 40 years in prison.
I knew that was not going to bring my child back, but it really made me feel a sense of relief. Finally, we got this person that shot him.
When we were approached about this case, it stands out to me because I have 2 voicemails in my phone that I've kept for years. I said one of them's from my mom and the other one's from Greg Joseph, which is Juan Joseph's dad, who called me after this whole process was over and thanked me for what we did in the case. And that means everything. We don't start off doing this for money or accolades, but when we can bring justice for a family and they appreciate it, that's all we're in it for. And I keep that phone message and I'll keep it until forever.
David Ballard, this is Greg Joseph, man. I really appreciate it, so I'm sending you love from me and my entire family, man. Thanks. And may God continue to bless you. We need those kind of people in this world that does what you do and that feel. Thanks a lot, man. You can call me back anytime. But again, just call and tell you thanks. Appreciate it.
And West St. John was the state championship. It became full circle.
And in 2017, that was the first championship since Juan and I did it in 2004. It was a pretty special moment.
I think all that coupled with the energy and the love that the community had for Juan, I think they channeled all that and did it for Juan ultimately.
It was almost like a weird sense of closure because the community was there. Edgar was there. That was part of Juan.
There's a community park was renamed to the Juan Anthony Joseph Memorial Park.
At some point, people is not going to be able to recall about his glory days on the field. But the one thing that is going to be everlasting with most people is the way he made them feel.
People knew Juan as the quarterback, the football player, the coach. I knew Juan as my little boy, who grew up to be a father of my grandkids.
Like the old saying goes, legends never die. They have a lasting impact, and that's what Juan has.